You can take a flower, roll it up and make it fine. Sprinkle it with knowledge and a little bit of time. Cover it with headlines and a sweet euphoria too. Cannabis man, cannabis man, cannabis man. Spreading news and joy across the land. Diving deep into the growing green. Cannabis man, we're all keen.
Hello, and welcome into another episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Thank you for clicking on the show. I am your host, Don Kleppen. And if it's your first time here, welcome. Thanks for joining. If it is not your first time here, feel free to skip ahead to about the 10-minute mark or so. Listen for that second theme song, and then just pick it up from there. But first-timers, thanks for joining. This is a show where we're trying to take a more journalistic look at all things cannabis. I've been a broadcaster in Chicago doing radio for about 15 years and sort of transitioning out of that now, but I've been a personal cannabis user for about 20 years, found it helped me get to sleep at night and stay asleep, which is something I'd struggled with, and some friends introduced it to me after high school, and I just enjoyed it socially, and then have been fortunate enough to have a medical card in Illinois for the sleep issues, and it's just been very helpful in that regard for me. Kind of something I do later in the evening now, that's kind of how it's folded into my life these days as a dad and as somebody kind of working a 9-to-5 job doing alongside of doing these things. But love cannabis, have loved the plant for a long time, and I really wanted to just bring some conversations to the masses as the green frontier has been expanding for, in America at least, medically since the 90s with California, and then more officially, especially in a recreational capacity, in 2014 with Colorado and Washington. And then several states have joined since then, and then countries around the world, like Germany, as well as Thailand, kind of flip-flopping, but the Ukraine medically and several other countries have joined this sort of party and ending that prohibition there on cannabis. But that still kind of exists in a lot of America and plenty of countries around the world. And I think that conversations about the plant can be helpful, just at least in giving people some context and information. And I'm not somebody that believes it's right for everybody. That's not why I started the show. I'm not sort of preaching that it's some panacea for all of life's problems. I don't believe that it's right for everybody. But I do believe that it's right for people out there, myself included. And for us, we should be afforded the same normalcy, the same, to be free to use it in our lives without getting a side eye, without feeling like people are sort of judging you and the lingering propaganda from last century, the reefer madness and the work that was done on the reputation of cannabis. We're still feeling the ripple effects to this day. And so what led me to starting this show is this a long-winded way of me saying that what started the show for me, what made me want to, is that I wanted to talk to people who are in this space, whether they're business owners, doctors, scientists, politicians, entrepreneurs, inventors, or journalists, other media people who are covering this, writing about it, talking about it, exploring, what's going on with this, because this is history that's happening in front of us day by day. This change, wherever it goes from here, this sort of societal tug of war that's happening as people simultaneously reevaluating their relationship with alcohol, but, on whether that's related or not, and I think in some ways it is, but whatever people's feelings on alcohol are, there is an embracing of cannabis that's coming about, and part of that is just younger people coming up in a world where it is slowly, day by day, bit by bit, becoming more normalized and accepted, and that is a good thing. And as we do that, there are going to be bumps in the road. This is something that, we haven't seen, I say on the show many times, that we haven't seen something like this since the prohibition of alcohol in the United States back in the 1920s. And that was something that was reversed, a decade later. And as we go through this, things are certainly not perfect yet, and they likely never will be, but we are inching slowly towards a better society in terms of normalcy for cannabis use. And I reflect sometimes on the fact that, when I did realize that smoking was something I wanted to keep in my life, and, not quite 20 years ago, probably more like 17 or 18, after using it for a few years and it got beyond just sort of as a social thing, I often wondered if there ever would come a day like today, where places like Illinois, where I am, and other legal states around the country and other countries around the world, where you can, whether you're growing it from home or you're able to just go down the block or, 5-10 minutes away to a dispensary and just go in there, be able to browse a menu, talk to a bud tender, hopefully, if you're lucky, maybe, smell and feel some product and then walk out of there with a purchase. And you're never in a position where you're facing, being out of that. And especially if you are a medical user, that's a much better place to be than pre-legalization. So I do applaud that, and that all of that is kind of part of why I started this. And you can expect on this show that I will have conversations with those experts, with those people in the cannabis space, anybody who I think is doing work, studying, chronicling, anybody who's kind of involved in this that I think has something that's worth you hearing about. You're going to hear it here on the Cannabis Man podcast. While I've got you here, if you would be so kind, please leave a rating or review for the show. However you're listening, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you're at, there's a chance to just hit some amount of stars. If you can do that for me, I'd really appreciate it. Kind of helps people let others know when they're searching for podcasts to listen to. That gives them a little bit of an assurance that maybe it's not a waste of their time or that it's worth checking out. And so if you like the conversations I'm having with people, if you like the news stories that I cover, I usually like to rifle through some headlines. I'll tell you about events that I attended, like one of them was this weekend, a launch party for Best in Grass. I'll talk about some products that I'm trying, and just kind of muse about life, especially after I've tried some of those products. And of course, I like to wrap every episode up with a nice haiku, just a little take on the Japanese poetry style, just a short 3-line poem, so not torturing anybody. And I try and keep it in theme with what we talk about on the episode. So if any of that sounds good to you, ratings and reviews are definitely much appreciated. You can follow the show on social media. It's at the letter C Man Podcast on X and Instagram, Facebook, Cannabis Man Podcast Facebook page and YouTube channel. And you can follow me, Don Kleppin, Kleppin, on LinkedIn or Blue Sky or any of that stuff out there. On this episode, my guest interview is with a man who's doing some really important work in the field of legal cannabis and also tying some important causes to that great work. I'm talking about John Shute of Puff Creative, and they've launched an initiative, Puff Creative Cares, which is basically taking the work they do in the cannabis space, tying it to some foundations and some causes and giving money to those, raising money for them. And that's something that I'm just really excited about in this space. It's really hard to do given like the legalities we're facing and this sort of partial prohibition that we're in. And then I've got some news that I thought was worth your attention. There is a state that is looking to perhaps put a cap on potency for cannabis, along with eliminating home cultivation. A headline about the value cannabis has added to the Canadian economy as of last year. A new study found that cannabis use was linked to some positive results in a certain patient group. And some big news today out of the White House and what its potential is with rescheduling hanging in the balance. So, lots to get to on this episode of a podcast that has reached all 50 states, 90-some countries around the world, and 1,700 or so cities. and is in the top 100 podcasts on Good Pods in several different categories. It's the Cannabis Man Podcast.
This is Tommy Chong, and you're listening to the Cannabis broadcast.
Yeah, welcome back. So now we're into the show properly, and I want to talk to you about a wonderful time that I had this weekend. And I've been looking forward to it for a while, and it's always just so nice when you kind of, you're looking forward to something, the anticipation builds, and obviously we all know as that date gets closer, there's that potential for it to fall flat. You start almost getting that nervous energy about what it's going to ultimately be like when the day arrives. And I'm just so thrilled that I got to attend the Best in Grass launch party this past weekend in Avondale, that neighborhood of Chicago. It was at Bud and Rita's dispensary off of Belmont. And Mark Kazanik of Best in Grass, who I spoke with on last week's episode, you should definitely check that out if you haven't heard it. But he does a great job gathering a sweet group of people and putting on a nice party. It was, early in the morning. It was like 9 a.m. when the dispensary opened to kind of line up and get our judge kits. But we didn't know which kits we were going to get. You go there, you get in line, and you're just sort of like, all right, there's a lot of categories to choose from, but it's on a first-come, first-served basis, so you just don't know how it's going to go. But I got there, always great people to meet there, always a fun time. There were donuts, there was swag around, there was a lot of energy in the air, positive energy, along with the sweet smell of cannabis, of course, outside the dispensary. A little skateboarding going on. Mark was revving up the crowd pretty good. And then the doors opened and everybody was just kind of chatting. And I got to say, the Bud and Rita's, that was my first time in one. And it was well kept. It was clinically clean the way that a lot of, dispensaries are, and which I get. Some people, it's a turnoff for them, but I understand why they do it, especially ones that serve medical. You want to give people that confidence of that you're taking, product sanitation and safety seriously and all that. But it also has to do with the normalization. I think that, clinical, even though it might not be the warmest or the most comforting or welcoming, it's reassuring in other ways. And I see why they've gone that way for a lot of sort of the design of these places. But I do appreciate when dispensaries kind of deviate from that and they're able to stand out in a different way. And I think the color scheme of Bud and Rita's, I think the imagery on their walls tied to Chicago, a lot of cool mural kind of stuff. The images were they drew you in. I thought it was just compelling. You could just look around the walls of the place while you're waiting in line and be fairly entertained, stoned or not. I like to think, because I was not at this time when I was in line there at like 9 a.m. And I was just having a good time talking with people. The wait passed quickly, and I really enjoyed the party. I think that people feel differently. Some people are not wild, certainly, about getting up at that time on a Saturday. As somebody who does morning radio still on Saturday mornings when I'm normally getting up at 3 a.m., waking up at 6 was no problem at all. I felt very good about that, and I was able to enjoy myself thoroughly and really happy with how it all turned out. And I was thrilled to receive the sativa flower Best in Grass Judge Kit. Was very thrilled with that, very pleasantly surprised. The kits come with about 30 different SKUs, different products that are in there for your review, and there's varying amounts of them, but it's all kind of a sample size of these things. And the goal, as Mark and I talked about, if you didn't hear it, is really to try and dive in and rank these on more than just like a numeric value basis. You really want to try and bring people into it. And so I have started my journey into this 2025 Best in Grass competition. And the first entry for me, as I'm once again lucky enough to be a judge. I was last year and I did the gummies category, which I did enjoy a lot. And it led me to trying a lot of gummies that now are kind of some that I'm not super into those at this moment. I've been doing more pre-rolls and now this flower and some beverages. I'm always good to try some edibles and looking for some new good ones, but I'm just not really on a gummy kick now. Maybe it's because of doing the kit last year. I did enough in a short enough period of time where I'm still kind of waiting for that appetite to rise again. But I digress. The first entry for me in this Sativa Flower Best in Grass Judge Kit is from Grassroots, and it is their Titan Express strain. And so in my effort to paint the picture, I wrote down some thoughts as I opened it and went through the experience here. And I actually fired some up just before I fired up this recording equipment and started talking to you. So if I do seem a little bit more spacey or if I'm wandering a bit between points a little more than usual, please forgive me because I'm heavy deep into the Titan Express here. But upon opening the jar, I was met by a very clean, fresh, and citrusy aroma. I felt like I got some lemony vibes. It was zesty though. Little bit of earth in there too, like a foresty kind of bit to the aroma that was like a streak in there. Soft and sticky to the touch. A bit remained on the fingers as I broke it apart to smoke in this bowl, this tiny little chillum that I've kind of been using to consume these. I'd like to keep it uniform, just for the sake of judging these things fairly, but at the same time, I feel like there's a better way for me to judge these and get a better flavor. I think I might move to a Dynavap. Those vaporizers, the dry herb vapes from Dynavap, they're fantastic. I've had George Brewa on the show a couple of times. Great episodes. He's such a brilliant engineer, and his perspective on the products that he makes are great. And they're really some of the best that I've tried. And they do have a great way of preserving the flavor and the terpenes, and it's a much more nuanced take because as George likes to say, the analogy is you're baking your cookies instead of burning them, whereas when you combust, there's always that element of burning the plant matter that's going to kind of taint the taste a little bit. And I find that the Dynavap does help with that. By the way, George is not paying me to say any of this. There is no ad relationship like that. I just really do enjoy the products, and I think that he does a good job with that. So I've been, thinking about moving in that direction. Either way, I did also, those are my kind of thoughts on it. And right now, what I like about it is that it is a heavy sativa. It is, that's as clear as day to me. From the first night I smoked it was last night, and then tonight before recording here. Last night I noticed a clear-headedness and an uplifting vibe that I really enjoy. I'm a sativa-leaning guy. That's why I was so thrilled to get this kit, because it's just, this is my preferred vibe kind of with cannabis, has been for a long time. I'm not opposed to a good indica and certainly hybrids, and the fact that those are the three umbrella categories that we have to deal with. I mean, if it's any of those or nothing, it's obviously I'm taking any one of them. But sativas are just the end of the spectrum that I prefer to lean towards. And so this Titan Express from Grassroots is just firmly there. So that's been my experience of it. And then just to kind of corroborate and see what else was out there, I went to this cannabisrealmny.com. It looks like a dispensary in New York, but they've got a decent enough review that I felt like, okay, this is, it was good enough where I felt like, okay, this is worth sharing here. They say it's an indoor-grown strain packed with potency, flavor, and the perfect balance of effects to keep you motivated and focused throughout your day. Sativa-dominant strain known for its cerebral stimulation and euphoric effects. The aroma is a delightful blend of citrusy, fruity notes with hints of earthiness, making each puff an aromatic adventure. As the effects set in, you'll feel a surge of energy, making it perfect for creative sessions, social activities, or when you need a mental boost to get things done. Cultivated in a controlled indoor environment, Titan Express ensures consistent, top-tier quality in every batch. Whether you're an experienced cannabis enthusiast or new to sativa strains, this 3.5 jar offers the perfect amount for solo enjoyment or sharing with friends. Okay, that's enough of that. But anyway, I found that the description about the aroma as well as the stimulation, the effects that I have felt, that it reassured me reading a review, and I found similar notes in some of the others that I came across. But I am a big fan. I have found, this is just the first one, and already, I don't know if you're like this listener, if you're a cannabis consumer, maybe not, but if you are, you may sometimes pine for strains of the old days. People talk about just some of the classics, some real icons like 2008 Sour Diesel. I think about like maybe 2014 Strawberry Cough, Headband. Blue Dream was always a classic from when I first started. The first time I think I probably bought my own, still on the black market, mind you, it was Blue Dream that I'm sure I was looking for. But those are some of the classics. Green Crack. So those are some of you might pine for some of those of like those years, maybe like a fine wine, but some of the crops in those specific strains were just going around and they were great. And what's great about today is there's so many options out there with all these products and all these, the legalization, and that's fantastic, especially because you can customize it and have it exactly how you want it, and there should be more layers and choices like that. But with that, tsunami of options opening up, there was something to be said about like, okay, we're all one city, even a city like as large as Chicago. There were times when it was just like all the dealers had the same stuff. And so everybody was kind of, at least again, when I was first in this place where I was paying attention to that market and was a buyer from it, I noticed that, it seemed like everybody was just dealing with the same stuff. And so that was another shared experience, another part of the bond. Not only were we participating in an activity that right then was still illegal, and because it was a black market thing, I've talked about this on the show before, but it was kind of like you when you'd meet somebody at a party that you never met before, and then you'd find out they smoked. It was kind of like you bypassed all of this getting to know you stage, and you moved to like a next level of friendship, like immediately. Because that understanding of, oh, you smoke? Okay. Yeah, we're cooler now. There, you meet strangers and there's just a timidity to it. There's just a level of getting to know somebody before you, whether you decide if you like them or not, or if you have a comfort level of communication. And there's just something about that's finding out somebody smoked bypassed back then. And that's another thing that kind of falls by the wayside with legalization, but it's a trade-off for many, many more benefits. And my ultimate point here is that while I have found myself pining for these iconic strains of past years, I already feel like this Titan Express from Grassroots feels like a modern-day classic to me. Going forward, I will remember Titan Express in this positive way, and if I am wherever in a legal market around the world, if Titan Express is there, I can feel good about purchasing that and feeling these effects, which is something that I would like to go back to. So anyway, that has been my beginning and my entry into the 2025 Best in Grass competition. But let me know what you think. If you've ever tried Titan Express, or if you think you might give it a try now, reach out to the show either on social media, or you can head to the website, which you can just search Cannabis Man Podcast on whatever search browser, and it'll take you to the site. But there's a contact page there, and you can send me a message. Would love to hear from you. And now let's all hear from someone else in the cannabis industry on this week's guest interview. My guest today is doing some very important work in the field of legal cannabis. You know, I'm always excited to kind of chart this ever-expanding green frontier that we are all fortunate to watch changing every single day right before our eyes. And even though the schedule hasn't changed as I'm sitting here in September of 2025, it's still Schedule 1 in the United States and still kind of in this hodgepodge prohibited state. That being said, there is still such movement and such excitement in this space. States and countries around the world are moving forward with their medical initiatives, and there are new recreationally legal spaces popping up all the time. And with that expansion and change comes a lot of exciting innovation. And some of that has to do with products to try and services that we can all take advantage of and enjoy some wonderful cannabis in different ways, different locations with new people. But there's also some other things that come up with it too. And one of those things that I'm starting to see a little more of, and I'm really excited about, is kind of a charitable initiative to go along with cannabis. There's a lot of great causes out there. We all know as part of the world, as citizens of the globe in 2025, there are lots of worthy causes that deserve time, attention, and some funding to kind of help, whether it's research, whether it's activities, whether it's kind of, helping support people of different communities. There are so many worthy causes out there. And because of, cannabis's legal sort of strangeness right now, I know that has been a very difficult mission to get started, even as the legal side of it does expand. But my guest today is making some efforts and doing some great work in that field. They are doing some of this. They're growing a charitable arm of Puff Creative, which is sort of a company in the legal space that is now focusing on uniting all of their giving efforts under one roof. Since 2017, the team has helped raise more than $12 million for nonprofits. This includes Companies Doing Good, Cannabis Impact Fund, and the Colorado Coalition Against Sexual Assault, all worthy causes there. And this month, they are partnering with Holly Hub out of Denver to support inclusive, stigma-free recovery during National Recovery Month. And so today, joining us to talk about this initiative as well as all of the great work that Puff Creative, which is a cannabis-focused marketing agency, is really kind of doing, giving a platform to other businesses as well as giving back to the community. Join me in welcoming, listener, the CEO of Puff Creative, John Shute. Welcome, John. Thanks for joining the show today.
Don, thanks for having me. I wish I had you to introduce me to every call and everything I was on, so thank you for that.
Well, hey, I'm going to try and make myself available for hire for that sort of thing going forward. But I'm really happy to have you here. And like I kind of said in the beginning, man, I think that the work that you're doing, I mean, marketing's important for branding, especially when you talk about cannabis and whatnot. But the charity side of this, I just love that you're making that effort and you're kind of uniting these giving efforts under one roof. So I do want to talk about all of this, but let's start just by talking about you, John. How did your journey into cannabis get started?
Yeah, I mean, my journey overall has kind of led me to this moment, really. Like growing up, my mom had childhood cancer. And so when I was born, my dad was an entrepreneur. I was kind of like my mom's like miracle child because she wasn't supposed to have children. And my mom ended up starting a nonprofit when I was young. And my parents always used and leveraged their businesses to kind of like help other causes. And, my mom like helped fuel her nonprofit to help, educate and provide funds for families in need with children with cancer. And so, I feel like that kind of perspective has always been ingrained. And cannabis, crossed my path as a teenager. And I'm from New Jersey, and so illegal up until recently, right?
Right.
And so, my experience when I was young was very discouraging. I used it because, it made me feel good. And I'm an extreme sports athlete and musician. So it kind of helped me fuel those fires as well.
Sure.
And, I was met with retaliation from my parents, from my friends' parents, from friends judging me. And so, pretty interesting, experience overall, because that really messed with me as a teenager. And later in life, I in New Jersey, and just in general in our country, and I think the world, I had friends and family suffer with opiate addiction. And so my right after my master's degree, I started my professional career as a creative marketer, and really saw the power of creative marketing and the influence it can have on folks. And right around that time is when I lost a few friends in the same year to opiates. And that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back of, hey, I feel like I need to be more purposeful and creative in how I'm approaching my career and how I can have an impact on the world, right? I knew I had some friends and family use cannabis to help get off, prescription medications and drugs. And I knew of people using cannabis to help with cancer, just to have an appetite, to sleep better at night, ease pain. And I initially, the only job on Indeed.com, I think in 2014 or 15, was the marketing director for a cannabis contract manufacturing facility in Northern California. And so I took that job, changed my whole life around. And classic, cannabis, 11, 12 years ago, this guy's completely screwed me over. And that's really what led me to Puff Creative. I made that company a lot of revenue while I was there, on both the B2B and B2C side of things. They were doing both hemp and cannabis. And so I really understood what went down from seed to sale for both getting, in the hands of consumers, but also the relationships with bud tenders, and what were the rules and regs between hemp at that time. And so, yeah, I learned a lot right after I kind of got into the industry, and really turned that negative experience with that employer into a positive one. And so that was, we'll be at 9 years at Puff Creative this upcoming March.
Wow.
Really proud of.
Well, that is, there's a lot in there, John, and thanks for sharing your story in that way. No, it's good. No, it's good. I believe me, I appreciate it. And I can also see how those pieces of your journey have built you into the man you are today, and how it's influenced where Puff Creative is. I really, what you said about growing up, I can only imagine the charitable side of things from your family growing up in that household, where, as you said, it was your mom medically was in a position where she wasn't expecting to have kids, and then has you. And so, I mean, I'm a new parent myself. Having kids is very special and fills your life with joy. But, I have a younger sister, Megan, who she was born without a kidney, and she was not really given much projections to live very long by the doctors, but she's still around today. She's about to turn 30 next year. Her and her twin, Melanie, are both, it's just great. And it fills the family with a lot of joy. But with those, early on with the medical concerns of it, my mom sort of felt the same way about them, that they were like her miracle babies. And then what they do to help people, it reminds me of kind of what you're talking about a little bit here, how that shaped you and what your family did charitably as you were growing up. I can see how deep that resonated with you, and I'm sure your mom and dad as well, and how it still does today. And I can totally see how that would inform the decisions you're making at Puff Creative to kind of move things in a certain direction, and with all the benefits that you guys are bringing, not just to the cannabis side of it, but sharing that wealth with worthy causes as well. I can really see how all that fits together. And something else you said, John, that resonated with me was this notion of growing up in a place where cannabis is illegal. And I think, at a certain age, we all felt that because, coming up in the 90s or the 2000s, before cannabis was legal in any form in any state, and it was still, widely prohibited. If you were using it, it was usually with friends at parties or something it was not sanctioned by the authority figures. If you were using it with friends, teachers, parents, officers of the law, anybody else in a position of authority was kind of repeating the Reefer Madness lines or the Dare Education lines of, hey, this is going to screw up your future. This is terrible. And yet, when I first started using it as a late teen after high school, and my friends introduced me to the plant, and I found not only was it so great socially, but it helped me get to sleep at night, and it helped me with anxiety, these things that I'd kind of struggled with in my life, and it was checking all these boxes in a big positive way. You're experiencing that for yourself while all these trusted authority figures are telling you one thing, and you're experiencing the opposite of that. It sort of was an early life lesson in the way that you just realized that you found something else out that these people clearly, if they hadn't tried it for themselves, or they were just, again, repeating the message that the trusted authorities were expected to be giving to them. I don't blame anybody for kind of, not having all those facts involved, but what it does for your perspective when you know a truth that people you respect and trust are not understanding of, it just kind of paints a certain picture, or maybe it's a wake up or a grow up moment where you realize, like, hey, actually, I know this to be true, and you're telling me that it's not the way that I know it is. Some people shirk from that, but I think it motivates people, and it's clearly motivated you.
Oh man, dude, I've been itching to put all of that into words, so thank you. That's literally exactly how I feel. It's funny. I just had this conversation with my mom. I live in Colorado, but I was just back in New Jersey at Atlantic City speaking on a panel at this conference called NECAN, and my mom came, and we were kind of joking because I mentioned, like, she was very angry with me when she caught me with cannabis, and I went through that whole phase as a teenager.
Yep.
And talking to her now, and she consume, like, we eat edibles together, and it's not even a thing anymore.
That's great.
But she was just like, hey, like, the only reason we reacted that way is because, like, we didn't want you to go to jail.
Right. Yep.
And I had friends growing up where their lives were just ruined over, like, one friend, there was like a seed in his, like, the bed of his car, or in, like, the footrest area of his car, and, like, ended up going to jail that day.
Oh my God.
It's a seed. It could have been any seed.
Right. Right.
And like, my other friend, like, an empty bag, like, nothing in it, just an empty dime bag. It probably was weed in it at one point.
Yeah, but not anymore.
That being said, their lives were completely trajected into a direction where today, I'm sitting here making money off of people in New Jersey in the legal cannabis industry. So there's that. And to your point about the motivation, I think that is part of, like, my bigger motivation day to day, because when I first discovered it, it did help me with my anxiety that I didn't realize I had. And it helped me with my extreme case of ADHD that I didn't realize I had. And it helped me be creative in extreme sports and art and music, which were things that I was being taken away from for, like, normal sports, that dream of being a professional athlete in the MLB or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And so cannabis to me is one of the most interesting, and really alternative medicine in general, just one of the most interesting things in this world, because it's so sacred and helps people in so many fascinating, unique ways. And yet, when you incorporate money, politics, authority into something like that, it's a recipe for beauty and disaster simultaneously.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm experiencing right now. And that's, again, what really is motivating me. It's kind of like a, you know, fu
Yes.
to those people who judged me and made me feel a certain way, and to the folks who ruined my friends' lives.
Yeah.
And also, I have the opportunity in front of me to leverage the platform I've created, leverage all these different ways that cannabis can help people, physically, politically, social injustice wise, social equity wise. There's just, it's endless. And
Yeah.
so now that I discovered all of these different paths that we can start to see this change in the world that a human always strives for when they feel helpless. That's really what's pushing me right now, especially right now in this point in the agency where, you almost feel, you're 9 years in, you can feel burnout or,
Mm.
start to hit a wall. I feel more motivated than I ever have to help solve a lot of the problems that we're seeing around. And that kind of leads to this moment of this campaign that we're doing with Holly Hub, because we just rebranded our company. We just launched a new website, all these new case studies, all these new services. We're really hitting home with folks being authentic and infusing this communal perspective into their brands, into their ethos, because they are cannabis companies. And Puff Creative Cares, this is just step one, this Holly Hub campaign. We're doing 3 unique events in Las Vegas that are all going to be benefiting Freedom Grow this year. And then we're going to be tackling pretty much, I think, every quarter, different causes that our team where our team wants to see change in the world. And that's going to be, you'll see in the new year, that's going to be LGBTQ rights. That's going to be social injustice rights. That's going to be environmental issues and change that we want to see. And the big thing here for us is giving our team a purpose every day. Yeah, we do great marketing work. I'm very proud of every single client we have, our case studies, our awards, but that's what's truly fueling the fire of this impact that we're having at a huge level now. Like, I never thought I would ever say I've raised over $12 million, right?
Yeah.
I don't think people normally have the opportunity to say that. And so I'm really grateful of that, but it's not letting me slow down. And I really want to keep my team motivated and have a strong sense of purpose during a very interesting time that I think that we're all experiencing right now, the global and especially, weird national level here in the States.
Yeah. Again, well said, and a lot of exciting stuff in there, John. And I do applaud your efforts, because, seeing those things happen when you talk about it, seeing your friends' lives ruined in some cases, whether they're put in jail because of empty cannabis bags or seeds on the floor, or in the case of, lives ended because of opioids. This is the stakes couldn't be higher in those regards. When you see that when you're younger, and you kind of see these things still playing out in certain areas of the country.
Yeah. People are still in prison. Their lives are still being ruined, and then there's the whole industry making profit off of it.
Right.
And there's a lot of questionable things going on in that industry too.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I totally get the motivation, and I feel some of that same thing myself. I've had, experiences where people I know had their lives ruined or forever changed in a negative way, because of just the standing of cannabis and maybe having been pushed in a different direction, whether it was medically or for some other reason. But, this conversation we're having, it kind of reminds me of, I just read a study, and I talked about it on the most recent episode, about how there's been a timeline for a while where people thought cannabis was first used maybe 10, 12,000 years ago. They just pushed that back to 20,000 plus years. And yet, so there's evidence that shows we've been using it as humans for 20,000 years. And this last, not even 100 years, from 1937, when the Marijuana Tax Act really prohibited it in its current status and all this, it hasn't even been 100 years, but something we've been using for 20,000, its reputation has been completely ruined, and people's thoughts about it and all of this have been completely warped and altered because of this propaganda, because of this sort of the control campaign that's been happening. That has completely shifted where cannabis stands in a lot of people's minds. And so the work that you're doing at Puff Creative, that marketing, this branding, that's kind of what we're talking about when that's how you change people's minds. It's the same mission that prompted me to start this podcast 3 years ago, was that I just realized as a broadcaster, hey, I'm doing news and stuff, but these big media companies, these legacy ones that I work for, they don't want to touch this yet because they're still in the position of like they're national or global, and their lawyers, their legal team, they don't want to talk about this. Marketing doesn't want to get involved in it. And yet I felt like I had a mission as a news person to try and bring the truth to people, or at least give them some unweighted context as to, what the info we have about cannabis is. And so changing people's minds, that is what marketing is really about. That's what branding is kind of about. And I see that's a shared mission that Puff Creative has as well. And it is really cool that you've been able to raise as much money as you have. And it's really, I think your thinking and your stance on this is just perfect, where you, as you've mentioned, you're 9 years in. This is a time when some people maybe look for a different direction to go in. Some people might sell and get out or whatever. And it sounds to me like you're looking for more ways, and you feel more energized than you have in the past, because it seems like with all the success you've found, you still see that there's much more to do, and there's plenty of more worthy causes that you guys can use what you've done and your platform to help influence in a positive way.
Oh yeah, there's so much to do still, and I'm grateful to feel that way. And I also have children. I think you mentioned you do as well.
Yeah. Just my first, Violet, is being walked around right now. She's 17 months.
Oh, nice. Oh, wow. Yeah. My son's pretty close in age. You think he's like 20.
Oh man, that's awesome, dude.
Then I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I think that they're being a father, like being to where I'm at and everything you just said, and then simultaneously, trying to be a father, and think about the future in a different way. It's also just like extremely motivating too.
Yes.
I really, the fact that I've been able to do what I have, completely, again, never thought I would be in this position, and very grateful for it. But I really do think about the future world, that I want my children to be a part of and live in. And that's also what simultaneously, is really motivating me behind the scenes. And it's how I've, led me to this moment, right? It's how I met Nicole, who introduced us, Don, from Americana PR.
Yeah. Shout out to Nicole.
Shout out to Nicole. I met her in Berlin, and the impact that we've had here in the States, I really am trying to take to a global level, and have a similar perspective and approach when we're diving into all these other countries, when it comes to branding and marketing. And I truly believe that we can have that impact. And there's a lot of education that needs to be executed. There's a lot of passion that needs to be shared. And there's a lot of people that I would like to motivate in the same way that I feel. And so that's kind of where we're at right now, is continuing the efforts that we're doing here in the States, building out Puff Creative Cares, and then spreading this approach and perspective to the rest of the globe in the cannabis realm, and also just like alternative medicine in general. There's really interesting things happening in psychedelics. There's really
Yeah.
interesting things happening in the hemp space, and that's kind of that. Those things are all fueling the change that I would like to see, and
Yeah.
especially right now, more so than ever. I feel like mental health is a very critical factor at a national and global level. And so, alternative medicine is just, in my opinion, a way safer and better approach to helping with mental health. And
Agreed.
so,
Yeah. No.
it's a really cool time to be in this position and having these types of conversations with humans like yourself.
Yeah, thanks, man. And right on. I feel the exact same way. It feels like a real inflection moment where people are reevaluating their relationships with maybe, things like substances that were just the norm, like alcohol, cigarettes, sugar, caffeine, you name it. There's a long one. And then the sort of pharmaceuticals that come in with the Western medicine and stuff. We talk about on this show, I talk about Western medicine a lot, and it's like, I'm not against it at all. I think it has really benefited the world in many great ways. But when we talk about the plant-based stuff, like cannabis, like psychedelics, we were just talking about these other things that are there, I think that there's more of a balance that can be struck where people are not so reliant on the corporate mandated pharmaceuticals. They're not so overprescribed, some of these things, because some of the plant-based stuff, some of the alternatives like cannabis, they can maybe check some of the boxes that, one of dozens of pills that people end up being prescribed monthly. The cannabis can kind of maybe solve some of those things for you without so many negative side effects. And, it's an inflection moment. Talking about parenting, I know you feel this way too, John. When you do look at your kids, it's sort of like one of the things that does motivate me every day is knowing that, like, our kids are going to grow up in a world, hopefully, if we keep moving this path, down this path and we keep working, they'll grow up in a world that they don't have the same negative connotations about cannabis that people in our lives do, because that propaganda that happened in the last century, that's not around as much now, or at least it doesn't have as strong of a voice as it did then. And nothing is going to normalize it more for our kids than seeing it on the same shelves of grocery stores as like alcohol products or these other things that are there that are just totally normal. When they see cannabis just presented in the same light without all the negative connotations, that is going to make them grow up, and it's going to change the world in ways that nothing any of us could ever say or do would move the needle that much. And so I just think that it is a great time to be having these conversations. It's an important time to be doing the kind of work that Puff Creative and the new initiative Puff Creative Cares is doing. And I want to ask, John, because these things are such worthy causes and all of this, how can people get involved in Puff Creative Cares and just sort of these charitable initiatives that you guys are working on now? How best can people contribute?
Yeah, so in a number of different ways to answer your question. So, for example, like right now, for the Holly Hub campaign that we're doing, we have options for people just to directly donate, which I believe we've raised just over $4,000 since the beginning of this month for the nonprofit, which actually exceeded my expectations for the campaign, a little bit last minute. And they're kind of newer. So we were really just kind of leveraging that, like helping leverage our network to kind of build them up. And so we have direct donation links for any type of campaign that we do like this directly on our site. We also, in this case, have an opportunity for brands and different companies to partner with these nonprofits for months like Recovery Month, or maybe it's a Pride Month, or anything that's in theme. So we usually have about 2 or 3 different ways that someone can contribute. The one thing that I want to really get across to anyone that's listening is that contributing or supporting a nonprofit or an organization that you care about that's really solving an issue in the world that you want to see, it doesn't always need to be financial.
Right.
It really can be bringing awareness to your network, or maybe doing some type of collaborative event, or some online campaign that's completely free through your Instagram or through your blog on your website. And so that's kind of a big point that we try to get across with our campaigns and also like our clients. Like there's more to it than just donations. Like you can be genuine and and if like you could be impactful without having a bunch of money to donate.
Yeah.
So I want to encourage people to have that perspective as they kind of approach their businesses. And, if they want to see change in the world, just thinking about it in that perspective, because it's a one step at a time type of approach with a lot of these issues that we see. And so any of the digital campaigns that we're doing through Puff Creative Cares will have direct donation links for each campaign and partnership opportunities with the nonprofits, which I really encourage, because brands partnering with a nonprofit and doing a full campaign, it's more impactful and it's also more effective for the brand.
Yeah.
From a marketing and branding perspective, if they're really genuine about that effort. We're also starting to do in person again. A lot of our campaigns switched to digital during COVID.
Sure.
And so before that, we were doing a lot of in-person happy hours and like activations and fundraisers. So now we're starting to shift back towards that again. You'll see that with our events in Vegas. We're doing a live music, live art event, like a party. We're doing a pickleball tournament the next morning, and then we're doing a breath work and sound healing brunch the morning after that.
Wow.
And so we want to, it's called the Party Play Purify event series.
Love
we did
it.
it last year, worked out well, and then we're going to start taking it on the road, I think, to different conferences in 2026, 2027. So
very exciting.
You'll have in-person ways to contribute and then digital ways. So, don't be a stranger. I encourage anyone to reach out to me and see if they want to get involved in any of the campaigns we're doing. More than happy to get everyone connected up.
Yeah, I love that. There's a lot of exciting stuff you just mentioned there, John. A lot of good fun that people can have, and an important point as well. I think that there's a lot of there's just instinct from people to think that sometimes the only way to move the needle is with money, or the only way to sort of give to some cause you believe in is financial. And I think your point about the other options that are available for people, donating your time, just bringing attention to an issue, whatever platform you've got on social media, or just your friend group, passing out flyers to people when there's an event like the ones you're talking about, John. All of that stuff is helpful just by bringing people's attention and awareness to causes, and you can help in so many more ways. But I do want to, as you mentioned, there's more information about this, and with all those activities you just brought up of the in-person, the Party Play Purify stuff, which sounds fantastic. What is the website people can go to if they do want to find out more, or if they do want to give to these causes?
Yeah, our site, we just launched a new site like a month ago. It's puffcreative.com. It's spelled slightly strange, so it's PUFCREATIV.com.
Yeah.
And there's should be a pop-up at the top of the site for the Holly Hub campaign. We have a bunch of other really cool campaigns going on. Our events page is like right there with the MJ BizCon charitable events we're doing. So and yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so definitely feel free to DM me or shoot me a message, and we'll do some fun things.
There you go, listener. It's Puff Creative, one F in Puff and no E at the end of creative. So that's the Puff Creative. You can type that into your preferred search browser, and then it's John Shute, Shute, on LinkedIn, CEO of Puff Creative, and doing some great work, and has a lot of fun stuff in store for all of us ahead, it sounds like, and I cannot wait to take part in some of these worthy causes and fun events that John's got cooking up as well. Thank you so much for taking the time today, John Shute. Really nice to speak with you, hear your story, and just kind of looking forward to all the great stuff you've got in store at Puff Creative.
Thanks, Don. I really appreciate you having me.
And there you have it, listener. Want to thank one more time my guest this week, CEO of Puff Creative, John Shute. Really appreciate him stopping by and sharing his story, and I definitely applaud and appreciate the work that he's doing with Puff Creative Cares. I think tying this expanding green frontier to worthy causes is just, it makes a lot of sense, and it's important to give back in that way. And I'm just so thrilled that they're doing it in the way that they are. And remember, you can head to that website at any time to get involved in the ways that John discussed. Now let's get to some news this week, and there have already, early in the week, been some pretty big headlines that are worth your attention. One of them is that Massachusetts has proposed a potency cap on cannabis, as well as eliminating home cultivation. Now, these would be in the form of 2 ballot initiatives. One, an act to restore a sensible marijuana policy, and they're pushing to roll back aspects of the state's rec cannabis system, including imposing strict new potency caps for medical cannabis. Their proposals have stirred debate among patients, businesses, regulators, and public health advocates. Some key components of the cap proposal: a 30% THC cap on cannabis flower, a 60% cap of THC on concentrates, a restriction that no individual dose exceed 5 milligrams of THC in any metered delivery serving, and limits on packaging. Concentrates above 20 metered or measured servings per package would be banned. Version B omits the potency and dosage rules, focusing on broader repeal of rec market provisions. Now, this article from thehighway.co goes into a lot more detail, and I have shared it in the description notes below, which I try and do, so you can feel free to click the links in that description and follow along. Don't do that if you're driving, obviously, or, I know some people just don't like to read in general, apparently, but if you can't tell, I do. And I definitely don't mind. But I include these in case you either want to follow along or read for yourself later. And these are lengthy articles, and there's some really good reporting in a lot of these that I share with you, and I try to stick to reputable sources as well. But it's important to read the full things and kind of draw your own conclusions. But I thought that was worth you knowing. Another one here from leafy.co.uk, also linked below. Cannabis added $16 billion to the Canadian economy in 2024. The legal cannabis market generated nearly 29 billion Canadian dollars in total output, while supporting over 227,000 jobs across the country. This is according to a Canadian government report. That report was produced by the Canadian Chamber of Commerce's Business Data Lab, and it found that every dollar of increased output in the cannabis industry adds $1.06 to Canada's GDP. And they say that 29 billion Canadian dollars, 26 billion from production activities and 3 billion from retail. 15.1 billion in direct sales and an additional 14 billion in combined indirect and induced ripple effects throughout the economy. This article also goes into a lot more detail. That report has a lot of different, factors in it, and definitely worth checking out as well. But I thought that was a positive, and we've talked about the projections for cannabis, what it's done for the United States as well. There's no question that the money side of this is a big part of why a lot of territories are embracing it the way they are. But hey, that's a positive too. If it's improving people's lives, especially in a medical capacity, and it's making money for people and the rest of us, come on. Another article here, cannabis use has been linked to short-term relief of PTSD symptoms in veterans. This is from scipost.org. And it notes it's an ecological momentary assessment study of U.S. veterans found that days when participants reported a greater number of PTSD symptoms were followed by days when they experienced higher levels of negative affect and vice versa. But on days when veterans reported being high from cannabis for longer periods, they tended to report fewer PTSD symptoms and lower levels of negative affect. This paper was published in Psychiatry Research. They go into some details about PTSD, what can cause it, some of how the trauma kind of impacts somebody's moods and life. And the study participants were 74 U.S. veterans with elevated PTSD symptoms who had recently been discharged from treatment and who also reported using cannabis in the past month. And it used a screening survey at the beginning of the study. They were asked to provide daily data twice a day for 3 months. And they used a mobile app called Maverick to collect the data. Some of it was passive, like from wearables and health streams, and then active data through questionnaires. On average, they said those who took part kicked in new data on 58 days. And so it goes on. There's a lot more to it. And so again, I've linked this below as well. Feel free to check it out. But PTSD now add it to, and this has been talked about before, and there are some dispensaries and there are some businesses that are sort of doing great things and sort of helping veterans specifically with their efforts, with their products, with their services. I'm thinking of Mint, the cannabis dispensary, and I remember they run specials for veterans specifically, and I know other dispensaries do that too, and it's an encouraging trend. That, along with so many other medical and health-related issues, it's nice to see, just kind of the list growing and acknowledgement of further conditions that cannabis can kind of help alleviate. And finally, last article I'm going to talk about here, this is from marijuanamoment.net. If you've heard the show at all, you know I'm a fan of their publication. The headline reads, Trump posts video on medical benefits of cannabis for seniors as White House weighs rescheduling. This was published yesterday from when I'm recording this, which would be the 28th, so Sunday. President Donald Trump on Sunday shared a video promoting the health benefits of cannabis, suggesting that covering CBD under Medicare would be, quote, the most important senior health initiative of the century, end quote. Now, earlier in the year, if you haven't heard me talk about it or if you haven't been kind of plugged into the cannabis news cycle, the industry is awaiting the president's decision on a pending rescheduling proposal. Now, as I've talked about on the show, I'm not holding my breath, and I know that there are a lot of people in the cannabis industry, not that we wouldn't love to see it. It's just that this has been promised before, and recently, with President Biden. And the DEA held it up, and you can believe that if the president uses executive order or does something like that, the DEA will try and hold that up in courts as well. And that ultimately will be decided by the Supreme Court, I'm sure, as many other decisions these days kind of end up reaching that level. However, back to this article, what the nearly 3-minute clip, which repeatedly refers to hemp-derived CBD, means for broader rescheduling's prospects is unclear. This also, as the article notes, comes amid a contentious debate in Congress about federal hemp laws, and those are not just in federal Congress either. Those are in states. That is still playing out here in Illinois, this issue of whether to ban outright hemp-derived THC products or regulate them has divided the governor, J.B. Pritzker, against the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, for like the last year, maybe 2 years, whenever this issue first came up. But this debate is happening at the state level too, in legal spaces. The clip refers to the 2018 Farm Bill, and they talk about how that was the first step toward modernizing healthcare, and that did create the loophole that effectively legalized hemp-based THC up to the threshold of 0.3%. And that has led to sort of the proliferation of hemp products that you may see. And I've talked a lot about this topic on the show as well. I'm not going to get into it right now, but suffice it to say, it is a complicated debate. There's a lot of layers to it, and I think both sides have some strong arguments. Now, the president didn't directly comment on the video or share any thoughts. He just kind of shared the video itself, and it was produced by a group called the Commonwealth Project, which was, according to the article, a participant in since-stalled hearings on the marijuana rescheduling process that was initiated by the Biden administration. It submitted a comment to the federal docket arguing that, quote, historic proposal would provide for greater but not complete certainty for seniors, researchers, and physicians to engage in research or pilot healthcare projects which examine the benefit and distribution of medical cannabis, end quote. Meanwhile, the article goes on, a new poll shows that a majority of Americans do not consider marijuana dangerous. Though most do think of consuming cannabis, increases the likelihood that people will transition to using more dangerous drugs. So the gateway drug theory still alive and well, according to that new poll. But just another development out of the White House, and it's just, right now, it doesn't really mean anything more. It's just kind of another nothing burger, but something to excite people, I guess. And it does show that, I guess, if anything, that it's still something on the president's mind and radar. And we can hope that something does change. Said it before, I know that rescheduling is not perfect. A lot of people would love to see it just off the schedule, the controlled substance list altogether. But baby steps. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Let's just get something done. Let's get a little victory here. Get it off Schedule 1. That'd be a big win for a lot of people. But those are the news stories I thought I would share with you this week. And now let's wrap it up, as we always do, with a high haiku. Read for you by my friend Reg Kiefer. Reg?
Kaleidoscope eyes, man. Back for round 2 now. Buds whisper secrets to me. Judge's pen in hand. Buds whisper secrets to me. That was why I picked that one, Dad. Really like that visual, man.
Yeah, I do too, Reg. That's it's kind of funny to imagine a little bud just kind of chirping in your ear there. But I'll try not to think of that next time I'm smoking one. But anyway, thanks for that. And thank you, listener, for putting up with that and the rest of the episode. Really appreciate you joining. Be sure to take part in the conversation. Let me know if you try Titan Express by Grassroots. Big thanks to Mark Kazanek for the invite to the Best in Grass launch party. Great job, Bud and Rita's, on hosting. And I am so excited to continue sharing my thoughts and reviews of this judging kit and just take part in this journey again. Big thanks to John Shute of Puff Creative. Love the work they're doing. Really appreciate the story sharing of his and stopping by. And a big thanks to you too, listener. I will talk to you next week on the Cannabis Man Podcast. Bye-bye. Cannabis Man is 100% originally crafted by myself, Don Kleppen. Original theme music written and composed by Yusu Kim, aka Good Son.